curator at the Institute for Humanities, and welcome to the Penny Stamps Distinguished Speaker Series. The Institute is a partner in bringing you this great programming this evening. Today, this series presents the Korean artist, JuYeon Kim, presented with support also of the University of Michigan Museum of Art, of course. We welcome JuYeon to the campus earlier this month as the 2019 Roman Witt Artist in Residence. JuYeon will be in residence at the Stamp School through the semester, and she's working on a multimedia installation in collaboration with the Stamp School community and composer George Tsontakis that explores themes around the sensitive Korean comfort women, the abducted, abused, and raped female prisoners of the Japanese army during World War II. Today, you can find out more about JuYeon Kim's Witt Residency project, and there are opportunities to get involved. There's an opportunity for students in the Stamp School to join the residency project for a one-credit internship. If you are interested in getting more involved with the project, you can contact JuYeon Kim directly. And for information on taking the residency for credit, you can also see John Luther at the Stamp School for students out there that are interested. With time allowing, we will take some questions directly following the talk if you are interested in more information. Please remember to turn off your cell phones, of course, and you can also join the Penny Stamp series tomorrow for the regular programming with artist Marisha Yan at the Michigan Theater at 5:10. And there is an opening of her work directly following at the Stamp School with a Q&A. I think sometimes we forget what a cultural mecca this really is out in the middle of Michigan. This week alone, you can go to the museum's exhibition upstairs about art and the internet, the Stamp School's opening tomorrow, and the Institute for Humanities has the opening of David Updike on Friday. It begins with a talk with journalist Lauren Sandler at 4 o'clock, and then a reception with David's work that is in the Institute Gallery at 5 p.m. Now for some words of introduction to our guest. Born in Seoul, Korea, JuYeon Kim works and lives in New York. She has shown in both solo and group exhibitions nationally and internationally, including New York, Washington, D.C., Shanghai, and Seoul. Additionally, Kim has been awarded several residencies, such as the MacDowell Colony, Kohler Arts Triangle, and the Roswell Artist in Residence Fellowship. She has also held several positions as a visiting artist and a professor, and now she is the 2018-2019 Roman Witt Resident. Kim herself states about her work, "Although my installation project was conceived and initiated before my awareness of the Me Too movement, developing in the States and around the world, it seems to me to be so poignantly connected to the historical plight of women everywhere. While the travails of the Korean comfort women are an extreme example of women's integrity being compromised, the assault sadly continues on various levels and by different degrees for all of us." Please welcome JuYeon Kim.
Okay. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming here in this horrible weather. So I'm really honored to be here to give this talk to this distinguished crowd and at such wonderful museum. I came to Ann Arbor about 3 weeks ago to start a new installation. You've just heard what this project is about. So I love everything about the city and the school except for the weather. I move around a lot doing residences and teaching. But I'm mostly based in New York. So I thought the weather would be somewhat similar, but for some reason it feels much colder here. So let's see. So let me briefly start with a little talk about my artistic and cultural background because it has played an important role for my art practice. So soon after finishing my BFA in ceramic art in Seoul, Korea, I came to the States to study. I went to Alfred University, a school well known for its ceramic art and engineering programs. Instead of doing that, I decided to do digital art and printmaking because for digital art, because it was completely new to me, and for printmaking, the physicality of the medium seemed familiar to me. Then I did my MFA in painting in Philadelphia because I thought digital media is just, I had just way to control over it. I could manipulate everything, and I also missed handling the actual art materials. With printmaking, I wanted to do like more free form of like two-dimensional work on a like large scale canvas. So soon after finishing my MFA, I started my professional career as a painter for a couple of years, and then I have focused on like enclosed room installations over a decade now. So let me show you some of the images of my paintings in chronological order and move on to more recent works, which is like installations. I don't know, the image, it looks kind of washed out, so there's like the more details. So soon after finishing my MFA, I started doing residencies because I felt that I needed to be in the art community, and doing residency was a good way to do it. I did 1 year residency in Roswell, New Mexico, the alien city, for 1 year. So they pick about 5 artists, and I was given like a 3-bedroom house with a big studio that was, there used to be a barn. So I was going through like second culture shock. The first one was when I first came to the States. It was mostly for cultural reasons, but for this time, it was the extreme, like harsh weather and also the flat landscape. So it was the first time that I had ever been to the West, and I was also suffering from all sorts of allergies that I had never had before. So I had this like really extremely dry or watery like eyes, and I was actually seeing like white dots like floating around. So this is 90-inch square painting, and so you can actually see. So I started using this, like adding white dots for my paintings, and this was the first time that I was also like out of school. I had a lot of questions, like fundamental questions in general. So you see gray and black figures in the bottom asking and answering questions. So this is mixed media on canvas. So my paintings address uncertainty and confusion that manifest visually as contradictions, creating like energy-seeking resolutions. Complex and multiple layers of fragmented images intertwine to obscure their true identities, providing no like fixed reference points. So this is 29 square painting, acrylic and graphite on canvas. So my paintings became more monochromatic during this time. The paintings I did during my MFA period, they were more like colorful, like gestural, abstract. So it's like almost washed out, like playing with a lot of layers. But this is about 90-inch and 60-something inches. Similar size. I was playing with the idea of collage. So I would use actual collages for some parts and images of collages as some parts, and also play with the space, like foreground, background, and contradictory elements like line versus like big chunk of like pattern, darkness or lightness. So I did 1 month residencies in Connecticut called Real Farm Trust. So my studio was like 200-year-old house used by the housekeeper of, let me try to remember, John Alden Weir, an American expressionist. So there were like photographs of the artist all over the house, and I could feel the presence of the artist. So to deal with my fear, I started reading a lot of like Buddhist books, and Tibetan Book of the Dead was one of them. So I will talk more about it, the book, Tibetan Book of the Dead, when I talk about my installations later. So I was really inspired by the story of an Indian prince who would sacrifice himself to save starving tigress and cubs. So he would throw his body to the tigers. So my paintings often deal with the theme of guilt, sacrifice, death, and womanhood. This is 60-something by 80-something inch. I don't quite remember the dimensions. So acrylic and graphite on canvas. So this is more like the paintings that I did during my MFA period, like more colorful, gestural, like abstract. So this is 22-inch by 30-inch drawing. It is based on a Korean fable about a girl who sacrificed herself to save her blind father. So to have safe journey, sailors take her to the ocean and throws her into it. And so her blind father is fully cured, and he opens his eyes, and she ends up like marrying the king of the oceans, becomes his bride. So you can see the figure of the little girl on a lotus, and you'll see a lot of this shape in my other paintings. So one of the first things that I did when I came to the States was I asked my mother to send hanbok, which is a traditional Korean garment. So when I lived there, I never really wore it, maybe once for a special occasion. I thought that maybe I would feel if I wear it. So the function of the shape is, this is a female nude wrapped by the skirt of hanbok, again, traditional Korean garment. So it functions as like some form of like security blanket or armor that protects this vulnerable woman. So it is acrylic and graphite and paper cutouts on paper. So it's kind of hard to see this is paper cutouts, and I actually cut into the paper. Dealing with the same theme, painting, acrylic on canvas. You can see a little girl on a lotus again. This is 54-inch square painting. I was getting ready for my solo show when I got numerous phone calls from my 3 sisters in Korea. I still do. I think I had like this unrealistic ideas about the country, women, relationships, marriage, just in general. So all of them were, I thought they were having like happy family lives, but all of them were having affairs, which was really shocking to me. So I wanted to make paintings portraying people who live like in a rather repressed environment, but break taboos anyways, secretly. So you see like female bodies like wearing hanbok, but like a lot of their body parts are exposed. So they are placed in the landscape that gives them both vulnerability and security. So there are trees and rocks, but then they are not big enough for the women to hide their bodies entirely. So I wanted this painting to look like a traditional Korean painting, especially like Joseon Dynasty era. So the dynasty lasted for like 600 years till the modern time. at the time when virtues were highly emphasized. Dealing with the same theme, 12-inch square painting, acrylic and embroidery on canvas. 54-inch square, mixed media on canvas. This is 54 by 28 inches acrylic on canvas. So I wanted this painting to look like a traditional, still life painting by this well-known female artist in Korea. She is probably the only one known to the public. So she lived in the, 15th century. So it looks like a still life painting, but then when you look closely, there are some subtle sexual elements to it. So again, you see this figure, female nude wrapped in hanbok. Oops, what did I do? Oh, sorry. Okay, same thing. So this is 60-inch square painting, acrylic, embroidery, and paper cutouts on canvas. So this one is slightly different from the other ones because I wanted to give the women masculine power, so I provide them horses. So I tried not to go back to Korea because I feared that I wouldn't want to come back if I spend some time with my family. But I became ill after using a lot of industrial materials for my installations. So I went back to Korea thinking that I would stay there for only 3 months, but I ended up staying much longer than that. So while being there, I learned Oriental medicine and did a lot of volunteer work for mostly elderly women, in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. That's when I really learned Korean comfort women. Of course, I knew the history, but I didn't really know. So during this time, I didn't really do a lot of artwork. I was busy doing all the volunteer work in remote areas, in remote parts of the country, all over the country. So I was looking through works by artists that I like, and Van Gogh's drawings was one of them. So I tried to make my own version of his Van Gogh's landscape drawing. So I added bright colors, and it looks almost just like acrylic painting, but it's mostly embroidery. I was obsessed with this novel by Hermann Hesse called Siddhartha. So the book is about this man who goes through this journey to find the meaning of life, and he also tries to achieve enlightenment. And at his young age, he encounters Buddha. So I kind of identified his journey into what I was trying to seek in my life. So I actually used some text from the novel, so you can see something. You can't really read it. Let me just quickly go through this. I'm trying to finish this in 45 minutes. So this is one of the most recent paintings that I've done. I'm sure some of you have seen these images on the catalogs. This painting, this is one of the paintings, the flower series paintings that I did. It's kind of significant because I played with rice paper to make shapes mostly like flowers. By doing this, I had this idea of installation. So this is 17-inch square, so rice paper and paper mache stitched onto canvas, stretched canvas. So I was invited to participate in a 5-person exhibition in Lacoste, France. It is south part of France. It is like a medieval village built in the 15th century. So I was given, like there were like some big names, like Gada Emir and Alfredo Jar were in the show. So I was given like two like ancient looking like exhibition spaces. They were really like caves. So I turned one of the spaces into this site-specific installation. So I wanted to create a burial site for my dead mother. So my mother's death, it has had like such like profound impact on my personal life and my art practice. So I got a call from my older sister from Korea saying that my mother was holding alive to see me. So I knew that she had cancer, but I didn't know she was dying. So I went back to Korea and stayed with her at a hospice for like 3 weeks. Because she was like in excruciating pain, she was drugged most of the time. So my bed was right next to hers. Like she was not the mother that I remembered. She weighed like less than like 70 pounds, like really tiny. And she had this blank look to her. I think she was kind of in between state of like real world and the other side of the world. So I was going through like a lot of this like intense emotions, and the strongest one was, I guess, fear, and guilt came like followed like after fear. So I was really scared that she would pass away at any moment, and I didn't want to see her dead body. So I had to come back to the States to finish my first semester, my MFA program. And my mother passed away like within 24 hours after my arrival in the States. So I felt extremely guilty for not being there for her and for being such a like coward. Also, I had this like really vivid dreams day and night for 1 week. I think I was thinking about what was happening to my dead mother. So what I tried to do here is, again, to build a burial site for my mother. So my brother did this 49 days of ritual, like right after her passing. So like for Buddhists, we believe that when a person passes away, the person goes through this 49 days of trial. So what the ritual does is that it kind of helps the person go to a better place, or like reincarnated as a person for the next life. So I filled the four walls with this like paper flowers, like stitched onto like stretched canvas. So there are 4 walls representing like circle of life. So you see this shot is like 3 walls put together in the ceiling. And this is the detailed image of the ceiling. So I picked local flowers and plants, like in Lacoste, France, and dipped them in plaster. So you could still see some traces of the real flowers. You know, you can see some colors there. And this is a detailed shot of the first panel that represents like birth, childhood, and innocence. And this is the 3rd panel representing the right before death. And this is detailed shot of the centerpiece. All the elements of the installation is made with like rice paper and paper mache by hand. Like most of the like flowers are imaginary. So I kind of modified the installation and showed it for a show in Shanghai. And this is the entrance shot. What was interesting was that the connotation of white is different. So when I had the same piece in France, people like associated the whiteness as like purity or wedding or innocence. But when I showed this piece in China, some people actually came up to me and asked if it was about funeral or for the dead, so which was kind of interesting to me. I had a studio in Brooklyn, New York for a couple of years, and I really needed to see stars. And I also wanted to be in an environment where I could really get into my inner selves. And I tried the planetarium in the city, and I wasn't happy with it at all. So I decided to make my own planetarium in my studio. So it consists of 12 panels to create a 100-inch cubic space. I collaborated with an engineer in England, so he brought microprocessors that he programmed. So he came to my Brooklyn studio and we built this together. So this is the entrance shot. So each panel has different design, and we used thousands of LEDs and used wire to connect them. This is what it looks like when the LEDs are lit. So each panel has up to 12 pulsating lights with different time span, half a second to 16 seconds. So this is what it looks like when we put 3 walls and the floor together. So the whole idea of this installation is to lose your physical. So when you go in, you kind of lose the sense of walls, the ceiling, or the floor. So it feels like you're kind of floating in the air. Some people said that they were feeling like throwing up or felt really dizzy. So after completing this, I got kicked out for using a lot of industrial materials. I got a lot of complaints from my neighbors. So this is a museum shot that I had at the National Museum of Women in the Arts in Washington, D.C. So it was a collaborative effort between the museum and Savannah College of Art and Design. So I collaborated with about 20 art majors and some art faculty and about 20 Fiber Guild ladies in their mostly in their 60s. So the title is The In-Between that I got from Tibetan Book of the Dead. So I made 2 large installations, and this is one of them. I wanted to make intimate and primeval setting that potentially help the viewers find their inner selves. In some religious traditions, so images of all aspects of human nature are used to guide people to see their inner selves. And according to Tibetan Book of the Dead, right soon after one passes away, the person goes through reality into 6 psychological states. So soon after, the body dissolves first into the earth, and then the last into concentrated energy. There follows extremely extroverted or awakened state of mind. So this is the 6 psychological states or realms portray not only, let me just go through this, not only the basic human psychological makeup, but also the paranoia and uncertainty experienced in everyday life. So this is panoramic view of the interior walls put together. So it is 100 inches by 300 inches. So the materials are fiberglass and crow resin and pink foam on wood panels. So let me, oh, where's the other paper? Oh, shoot.
Is this it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Let me quickly read the description of each panel. So this is the realm of hell. There is a buildup of energies, of emotions to a crescendo, so that at some stage we find it very confusing whether the energies are controlling us or we are controlling them. Then suddenly we lose track of this whole race, and our mind is put into blank state, which is luminosity. From that blank state, an intense temptation to fight begins to develop, and that paranoia also brings terror. Originally, the paranoia and terror were supposed to fight against something, but one is not quite certain whom exactly one is fighting. And when the whole thing has developed, the terror begins to turn against oneself. You think there is something outside to attack, or fight, or win over, but it turns inward and becomes self-destructive. Symbolically, each intense torture is a psychological portrait of oneself. In the hell realm, you are not exactly punished, but overwhelmed by the environment of terror. Aggression and pride refuse to communicate, and the pride turns into an ice-cold environment, which reinforced by self-satisfaction. This is the animal realm. The animal realm is characterized by the absence of sense of humor. Animals know joy and pain, but they cannot laugh or smile. Somehow, the sense of humor or irony is not known to them. One could develop this by believing in a certain religious framework, theological or philosophical conclusions, or just simply remaining secure, practical, and solid. Such a person could be very efficient, very good, and consistent at work and quite contented. What is lacking is that if any unknown, unpredictable situation occurs, there is a feeling of paranoia, of being threatened. Sane and solid situation without sense of humor is the animal realm. This is the hungry ghost realm. We get into luminosity by working up intense greed. There is a sense of poverty, yet at the same time, a sense of richness, contradictory and yet operating simultaneously. Whatever you want, you find yourself possessing it. And this makes us hungrier, more deprived, because we get satisfaction not from possessing alone, but from searching. So there's constant, intense hunger based not on a sense of poverty, but on the realization that we really have everything, yet we cannot enjoy it. This is human realm. The human realm is based on passion, the tendency to explore and enjoy. It is the area of research and development, constantly trying to enrich. Suspicion comes with passion and makes human beings more cunning, shifty, and slippery. We build up our world with tremendous success and achievement, but this escalation of building up tools and anti-tools develops constantly and introduces more sources of passion and intrigue. Finally, we are unable to accomplish such a big undertaking. This is the realm of jealous God. There is a tendency to look back and suspect your own shadow, whether it is real shadow or someone's strategy. Paranoia is a kind of radar system, the most efficient radar system the ego could have. It picks up all sorts of faint and tiny objects, suspecting each one of them, and every experience in life is regarded as something threatening. The purpose of this realm is purely to function within the realm of intrigue. This intrigue could be based on any kind of relationship, an emotional relationship, or the relationship between friends, or a teacher and student. This is the realm of gods. Instead of completely dissolving into neutral ground, one suddenly begins to a sense of responsibility of maintaining oneself, living in a state of absorption and peace. It is also known as the realm of pride. Pride in the sense of building one's own centralized body, preserving one's own health. It is intoxication with the existence of ego. You begin to feel thankful to have such confirmation that you are something after all. Because you are something, you have to maintain yourself, which brings a natural state of comfort and pleasure, complete absorption into oneself. So this is the other installation. So while the previous one, all my works are untitled with subtitles. So the previous one, I call it a cave installation, and this one is like meditation installation. So while the other one is with its hard surface and like erect shape, is indicative of male characteristics, and this is more like feminine and inviting. So 108 fabric panels are loosely hung from 100-inch ring attached to the ceiling. So this installation like really obsessively breaks into the tiny details of human traits. About 15 to 20 images are embroidered onto fabric, totaling about 1,600 images. So the seemingly beautiful and passive embroidery reveals like grotesque or sometimes violent images when a viewer gets close enough to examine the intricate details. So there are, again, 108 pieces in 3 different layers representing the first layer is white on white and the white on white, and the middle layer is color on white, and the last one is white contour line on gray background. So the significance of the number 108 comes from Korean Buddhism. It denotes 108 human struggles. So the Buddhist rosary is made with 108. 108 bows are performed upon visiting a temple. So the process of counting each bead or bowing allows one to contemplate or let go of hardships in life. So instead of providing Buddhist rosary or religious chant, I wanted to provide this peaceful space full of overwhelming images that are both comforting and disturbing. So there are different ways to calculate the number 108, and this is a traditional way to do it. So there are 3 desires: bodily desire, desire to exist, desire not to exist. When those 3 desires are engaged with 6 senses, there is a feeling of good or bad. And such phenomena happened in the past, it's happening now, and will happen in the future. So 3 by 6 by 2 by 3, you get 108. So this is one of the study drawings that I did for the installation. And the first raw is images of bodily liquid, and the second is illness and unexpected accidents that we could have. And the third ones are illness, and the fourth one bodily pleasure, and the last one unexpected events that could happen. Human relationships with animals. Detailed shot of one of the panels. So this is white embroidery on white, representing future. So the innermost layer of the installation. And this is one of the panels in the middle layer representing the present. So this looks like a watercolor, but it's embroidery. So I wanted to make bathroom installation. Again, this is Untitled. So I did 3 months residency at Kohler, the company that makes bathtubs and toilets. So I shared the space with the factory workers. So my studio was in the corner of this huge space, and the workers were making like bathtubs next to me. So my plan was to make 108 tiles and also like modified like, version of things, but I only had enough time for like 64 tiles. So I wonder like what bathroom means to you, but to me it's such like contemplative, like meditative space that I start my day and then went down. So I often say that I could totally live at the bathroom of MoMA. So this is a detailed shot, so it gives you a better sense of the thickness of the reliefs. So they're quite thick. It looks easy, but it's kind of hard to make like flat tiles with such like thick reliefs. So I had some technical issues, and there were like a group of engineers upstairs, and I also had like full-time technician like working for like 2 artists, including me. So I used all the materials that they used for their production. So this is the very first tile that I made, and the factory workers freaked out. So I was told to stop working till I hear further notice from like higher up people. So I waited for 1 full day, and then next day I was allowed to continue to work on this. So each tile has its own theme, and this is bodily liquid. So the factory workers, they are like really conservative and traditional people who go to churches every Sunday, and they get married in their like early 20s. And so this is domestic violence. So each tile is like 10-inch square, somewhere between like 1 and 2 inches thick, or even thicker. Suicide, mystic creatures. I was trying to think about like organs in relation to my hands. So this is big and small intestines on hands. Be mindful of like body, pollution, compassion, gluttony, abortion, addiction. So this is the project that I am currently working on, because like all the other installations, all my works, including my paintings as well, like really time-consuming. So I first had this idea for the installation about 1.5 years ago, when I did a residency called MacDowell Colony in New Hampshire. So the theme of the project is Korean comfort women. She did a good job like explaining who they are. So most people don't know who they are, even like Koreans, especially the young generations. So about 200,000 like Korean women were abducted and like sexually assaulted. They were like worked as like sex slaves, and most of them were killed. Like very few survived, and some were able to return to Korea, and some couldn't because their own family rejected them. And again, I knew the history but didn't know much about them till I did the volunteer work for the elderly women in Korea. When I was there, I saw like a lot of footages of Baidu women, and I was like really like heartbroken. And so it was like lost history, because like they kept silent till like 1990s, when like a couple of them decided to speak up. So still people really don't care, even Koreans don't really care. The Korean government, not to mention the Japanese government, did nothing to them. All they want is like sincere apology mostly from the Japanese government, but I don't think it will happen. So only like 25 of them survived. Last year, I think one or two of them passed away. They are mostly in their like 80s. So these plants are like some representational, some imaginary like flowers and plants made with art resin, which is like a non-toxic acrylic-based resin. So it takes 1 full day to make each piece. This is some still work in progress. It looks almost translucent, but some of them are like this. The material, it has this like glass kind of texture. So some of them are like transparent, really shiny. So it's all like transparent to some degree of translucentness. So if there's like a little hint of color, it's the flowers that with like dead bugs encasted in the resin. So you see dragonfly in the flower. So this is one of the miniature palanquins that I did for study. So I made like 4 miniature palanquins for the installation, and this is one of them. So there will be like 2 palanquins in the center of the installation, and then there'll be like plants that will surround the palanquins. So one of them will be made with like a lot of materials, including wood, fabric, paper mache, plaster, and the other one will be transparent. So the main material will be, for the second palanquin will be plexiglass and art resin. So this is one of the miniature palanquins that I did for a study. So this is the last image that I'm going to show you today. So you see, it's still work in progress. You see palanquin behind the plants. So most people don't know what palanquins are. They are used widely in East Asia. In Korea, we used the palanquins for like many centuries. It was widely used during like Joseon Dynasty up till like mid-19th century. So the function for palanquin was to carry someone special for special like occasions. It was used for like 6 different like functions. Like one of them was to carry bride or nobles, kings and queens. So the palanquin for this installation will be to carry the living or like a dead person. So it is like life-sized palanquin, so one person could sit in it. So so oftentimes a palanquin is carried by like 2 men, 2 or 4, even more men. So it will carry a person in pain into a better place. So I know the subject matter is really heavy and serious, but I want to create this like almost beautiful environment, like pure, like innocent, like comforting environment for, especially, yeah, of course, especially for the Korean comfort women, but people in pain in general. So that's it. Thank you. So is it?
You want to ask any questions? We're not going to use the pass mic today. Just raise your hand if you wanted to ask a question.
You mentioned different cultural reactions to your use of white in your work, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about it from a personal perspective, your use of white.
My personal perspective?
Personal motivation, interest in using white.
You mean white?
Yes.
Well, I guess it is like solely based on my own personal experience. Like white to me, I think I see it like 2 different ways, like Western like point of view and Eastern point of view. Like white to me It's like, yeah, innocence, it could symbolize innocence, like wedding, purity, and also it reminds me of like funeral. So we use white paper flowers for funerals in Korea. So it also reminds me of that. So I guess because of my like cultural upbringing, so I grew up in Korea, but then I spent most of my adult life here. So, yeah. Yeah?
You said about the factory workers being a bit conservative in the place that you were making the tiles.
Uh-huh.
I was just wondering, did that influence the content of your tiles?
No, not at all. Because they were kind of really random. I mean, they were like really disturbed by the little girl pissing, but then they were totally okay with, I mean, I didn't show the title. They were totally fine with this like dancing girl, like pole dancing. And like some of them actually came up to me like, could I have like copy? Like, okay, fine. So, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for your wonderful lecture.
Oh, thank you.
Your last piece, your artwork regarding comfort women and people in pain. I felt I had to come by. I don't have good training. I'm not trained to see the artwork, but I felt your kind heart and your compassion for comfort women and people in pain in general. Did you have a chance to show your artwork to those,
Women?
comfort women, and if so, how was their reaction to that?
No, well, I started this, of course I did worked on this installation here, and I'm hoping to, I haven't met any of them. I want to, so I'm gonna apply to Fulbright this year so that I could, go back to Korea and maybe meet them, and hopefully I could show this piece for them in Korea, or, yeah. And that was the whole vision for making this, just for them, yeah. Any other questions? All right, thank you.